Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeyed with me, Dave OHara. Greatly appreciate you tuning in. Got another great show lined up for you this week. I know you'll think so after seeing it. Got Joe Mershman joining me here in just a moment, the president and CEO of Mershman Seeds, and then also the Hawkeye Insider, David Eicholt. Why? Because he is the Hawkeye Insider, HawkeyeInsider.com, but also the former quarterback, James Vandenberg, the Iowa Hawkeye quarterback, joins me, as well as Jeff Horner, the former Iowa Hawkeye, playing basketball great, and now a current head coach at Truman State University. So looking forward to catching up with all those guys and bringing you another great show. But now I've located my buddy Joe Mershman. First and foremost, as always, Joe, thanks for joining us. And secondly, belated happy birthday to you. It was last Wednesday, but I wanted to say you and Mershman Seeds, going back and forth with age, if you don't mind me saying, and you told me off the air you didn't, you turned 66 on January 6th, and now Mershman Seeds, 67 years old. So you two running long and strong. I love it. Congratulations and happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I tend to think that maybe Mershman Seeds and I was started about the same time.
Well, you and I joked about that last week. That's exactly right. But hey, I wanted to tip of the cap to you and also to Nick Saban, Alabama Crimson Tide. We record this on Tuesday afternoon. They won the national championship last night in football, and they beat Ohio State, which makes a lot of Iowa fans happy, even though they're Big Ten fans. There are not a lot of Ohio State fans in and around the Midwest, Iowa in particular, that's for certain. But I will say this to you, Joe. The thing that strikes me about Nick Saban, whether people like him or not, is how he's been able to evolve with his coaching and the program, winning his 7th national title now as a head coach, 1 with LSU and now 6 with Alabama. It's very similar to what you have done with your company at Mershman Seeds and taking over the reins from your dad, Bill, all those years ago. And you have to keep evolving and changing and staying with the times, don't you?
Well, we've never won a national championship, Dave, but I can tell you we started out as an oat company and we changed to a soybean and corn company, and thankfully so, or we wouldn't be here today, I can guarantee you. So I agree, you have to change and you have to embrace change if you're going to be successful in life.
Well stated as always by you, and as you stated last week and in weeks past, you've always said to me, it's easier to start a business than to stay in business, and you're a living, breathing example of that. So congratulations as always. And Joe, I look forward to catching up with you next week, my friend.
Take care, Dave.
And I've located David Eicholt, the Hawkeye Insider, HawkeyeInsider.com, at David Eicholt, or at Hawkeyes on 24/7 via social media. First and foremost, as always, David, thanks for joining us. And secondly, as always, great coverage by you, and hope all's going well with you. You're staying busy, obviously. Let's talk Hawkeye basketball. Michigan State, we're recording this on Tuesday afternoon. The Hawks play Michigan State on Thursday night. The viewers will have already seen that game, but let's preview that. Tonight, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, Michigan and Wisconsin play. So Iowa could either be alone in first place in the Big Ten, or tied for first in the Big Ten, or alone in second as they are now. Much to discuss with you today in a short period of time. Also the Iowa-Northwestern game. We'll talk about that. Iowa travels to Northwestern, Michigan State in Iowa City on Thursday night. But let's retread back just a step or two. Iowa beats Maryland on the road and comes back home and avenges their earlier loss to Minnesota to beat them at Carver Hawkeye on Sunday. I'm going to step out of the way and let you roll, my friend.
Yeah, I think to start things off, Dave, I think you just saw the best of both worlds for Iowa. Keep in mind, the bench really guided Iowa to victory against Maryland. Remember, Joe Wieskamp, C.J. Frederick basically sat out the last 14 minutes of the first half, and we saw guys like Keegan Murray, Patrick McCaffrey, Jack Nunge stepping up. And then on Sunday against Minnesota, the bench really struggled. They only had 9 bench points, but then you saw the 3-headed monster and Jordan Bohannon, who was named the Big Ten Co-Player of the Week, along with Indiana's Trace Jackson Davis. You saw Joe Wieskamp get back going with 20 points, and Luka Garza just business as usual, night in, night out. Just those 3 outscored Minnesota 72-71. So I think you're seeing the development of the bench and different guys stepping up. So I think you're seeing depth emerge, and the versatility of this Iowa team continues to get better and better. And for 4 straight games, they've allowed fewer than 75 points. That defense is starting to get swinging, and they're going to need that if they want to win the Big Ten title come March.
Well stated, and the depth came through big time again for the Hawkeyes at Maryland when Wieskamp and Frederick stumbled and out of the blocks and kind of staggered throughout the game. And man, oh man, yeah, as you mentioned, Patrick McCaffrey, Joe Toussaint, Jack Nunge, Keegan Murray, that whole group, and then Jordan Bohannon showing leadership. And we were joking, I'm going to joke with Jeff Horner here in just a little bit about Jordan Bohannon, now number 3 on the all-time list for the Iowa Hawkeyes in assists, very close to passing Andre Woolridge, 8 more assists, and then Jay Bull be number 2, 45 assists more this season, and Jay Bull will pass Jeff Horner and be number 1 on the all-time assist list. But great great leadership from him. Luca Garza doing Luca Garza things. So let's talk to you then about what's upcoming against Michigan State, who's no longer in the top 25, and Iowa is number 5 still ranked nationally in the AP. Then, of course, a Sunday game at Northwestern. Got to watch Boo Buie, and you got to watch Nance for Northwestern.
Yeah, I'll start with Michigan State, Dave. Keep in mind, this is the 5-year anniversary of the rout when Iowa routed Michigan State. I believe they had Denzel Valentine on that team. So kind of an interesting timing of that game as well there. Look, I don't care how good, how bad Michigan State is. I know it'd be a quad 3 game technically by the net rankings, but it's still a Tom Izzo team. They have a lot of talent. They can shoot, they can rebound, but we'll see if their defense stacks up. I think the lack of having a true point guard has really hurt Michigan State. So Iowa's going to have to be completely locked in. They're going to need Joe Wieskamp. They're going to need Jordan Bohannon to keep doing what he's been doing. And then on Sunday against Northwestern, I think Iowa matches up very well against Northwestern. If Iowa gets going from 3 and they lock down Boo Buie again, I don't see the Wildcats upsetting Iowa. I think Iowa goes 2-0 this week, and the train keeps rolling before things kick up a notch with, obviously, then Nebraska. Then they face off against Illinois in the team's only regular season meeting.
Can't wait for that, David. Great stuff from you as always. And thanks again for keeping us covered. HawkeyeInsider.com's David Eicholt, the Hawkeye Insider. Thank you, my friend. Talk to you next week.
Hey, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome, and thank you. Looking forward to catching up with James Vandenberg for the rest of the show in just the next segment, and then also Jeff Horner to close out the show. So back with more Hawkeye with me in just a few moments.
One word means more to farmers than any other: yield. Nobody knows this better than your friend in the field, Mershman Seeds. With industry-leading seed treatments like Tripidity ST, you'll see faster emergence and more bushels per acre. Become a part of the Mershman family and see the difference in your field. Ask your dealer for superiority, Mershman Seeds.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave OHara, and as you can see, I've located the former quarterback of the Iowa Hawkeyes, James Vandenberg. James is a part of that RBC Wealth Management team, CorridoreInvestmentGroup.com. Check it out. You'll be glad you did. James, quarterbacking you through your financial future. So first and foremost, as always, my friend, how you doing? And secondly, and most importantly, as always, thanks for joining us.
Hey, no complaints here. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Oh, it's my pleasure as always. So let's pick up where you and I left off last week. We were talking about some of the departures of the Iowa Hawkeyes, either going to the NFL or being done with their eligibility or deciding to leave early if they could come back. So I'd like you to take us through your process when you were done in 2013. You were a free agent by the Minnesota Vikings, but let's say if you were drafted like Nate Stanley was in the 7th round by the Vikings, you were a free agent by the Vikings and were on the practice squad and training camp. But take us through that process that a former Hawkeye going into the NFL or into the future, what they go through. I'd like you to take us through both sides because you speak to the players. Coach Ferentz has you come in and talk to them about financial responsibility when they come into the program, but also when they're leaving the program. So I would like you to talk to us a little bit about that process that you talk to the players about, but also what the players go through themselves or what your experience was.
Yeah, it really starts a long ways before, obviously, the draft or free agency. As those guys know they're coming out, say they're a senior, first thing you got on your plate is determining an agent and kind of the all-star games and the combine. Those are kind of all things that happen in January, February. That's the Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, or the East-West, and then obviously the combine. So those guys are all going through that process now of what they're going to attend, what they're not going to attend, what they get invited to. Obviously, the combine is how do I even put the combine? It's like a world-class, like I don't know how to describe it outside of scrawny, non-muscular guys. It's not a great place for you to go show up and take your shirt off. I know that. You feel out of place. So I did get to go to the combine. It's really cool. There's players from all over the country, but it really is. I mean, it's kind of like a bodybuilding contest and a running contest. It's very numbers based and it's very show up, run, and hang out the rest of the time. You do a lot of interviews at the combine. Most people will interview with 15 to 20 teams while they're at the combine. So them peppering you with questions, them asking questions about your personal life, them asking questions about your knowledge on concepts. Some, you hear the stories, some of the guys ask really hard questions and run really hard interviews. Other teams run more standard, I don't want to call it questionnaire, but maybe not as difficult. And then obviously, as you get closer to the draft, it's just anticipating where you're going to end up. And once you decide or get drafted or free agency, you hit the ground running basically the next day of rookie mini camp, OTAs. It's basically every day scheduled after the draft, and you got to hit the ground running because you're drinking from a fire hose. Especially you bring up Nate Stanley or any other quarterback. I mean, the playbook that you're digesting in the NFL is certainly bigger than a college playbook.
Yeah, and so now before we get into more of the combine and what you see or experience when you get to the combine or even afterwards with the NFL guys, do you go through an exit interview type of thing with Coach Ferentz and your position coach or your coordinator? Or what is that process like when you're leaving the Hawkeye program?
Yeah, so that's one thing I did love. Coach Ferentz has a closed door, 100%. I mean, you and him meeting where everything basically remains between you and him. And he wants to know the best parts of your tenure at Iowa, the things that need improvement. He certainly is not against hearing feedback. It's something you know about him when you know him personally or play for him, but him letting you review and letting you give kind of your touches is a big part. And I know guys that have spoken their mind in those meetings, and I think it's led to change. But I mean, that meeting's a little bit sad, quite frankly, because it's kind of the last time you sit down and get to have him one-on-one. Certainly I've got to be back since, and it's great. And being around the program, it's a lot of fun, but it does signify kind of that you're going to the next phase of your life, whether that's NFL or family or job, whatever the case may be.
You know, and what I want to get into in weeks to come is what the Hawkeyes went through this last year in June, July, and August going into the summer, not just for the Big Ten deciding we're going to play this season, not going to play, we're going to play again. The ebb and flow of that stop, start, what you and I have talked about all fall long or all season long was what you've got to do to prepare yourself as a player for that kind of unpredictability, because I think football players, as you know, are the most regimented, but then also we take a look at something as far as the rug being yanked out from under them, and okay, now you're going to play. Then you have a great season, stumbled out of the blocks, and you play 6 great games. Again, capper on it by beating Wisconsin at Kinnick Stadium 28-7, a rival that's had your number for a while, and then the rug gets yanked out again at the end of the season against Michigan, and then obviously the bowl game against Missouri. They're testing positive, not Iowa. So we're going to get into that, you and I will, this whole season, but I wanted to go through that process of leaving the Iowa program and getting ready. Did you have a personal trainer? I know things changed in the 7 or 8 years since you've been gone, but are guys now getting ready for that, or are they training still at the facility at Iowa? Is it still available to you? What's that type of process like?
Yep. So that's a great question. There's a lot of strengths of Iowa's program, and their training, their strength and conditioning program is world renowned. And that's not just saying that. When you do those interviews I referenced, I probably had 5 or 6 coaches, position coaches, head coaches comment on how playing under Coach Ferentz and Coach Doyle and that system gets you ready for the NFL better than anything they could do. And they make a lot of comments about they know exactly what they're going to get because they run a tight ship at Iowa, quite frankly, and you got to do your work. So a lot of guys have selected over the years to stay at Iowa because it doesn't cost you anything. And you're getting world-class training from diet to speed training, everything you need leading to the combine, you can do at Iowa. There's certainly flashier places to do it, Florida, Texas, California. And certain guys will go there just because they want to get out of Iowa and they want to go feel warm weather. And I don't tell them that that's wrong, but over the years, I'd say the majority of guys have chosen to stay and train. And what they do is basically the team's continuing to train, but every spring when guys decide they're leaving, there's an NFL group that's formed. And that group works out together basically around the team schedule from roughly January to March, April. And so you kind of go from being with the team to then being in an NFL group. And that's also welcome to NFL guys that are coming back to work out just in the off season. So you get a mix of current NFL guys and then a mix of guys that are prepping to enter the NFL.
This is fascinating stuff, and you and I have talked a lot on the air, off the air over the years, and I've never really gotten into this with you, so I want to continue this throughout the next couple of weeks, and then again, where the Iowa program went and now where it is now. Again, this summer was something else, and we're going to go into all that, but I really appreciate you taking us behind the curtain, so to speak, and Iowa's success in the NFL, NFL players, Iowa producing NFL players is no secret, at or near the top every year of putting guys out there in the NFL, and highlighted by Hawkinson and Fant being first-round draft picks, tight ends. So they're, tight end we've heard all these other things, but offensive linemen now with Tristan Wirfs, but a lot of position players too. And so I really want to get into that more as the weeks go on here, James. So I really appreciate your insights and look forward to catching up with you next week, my friend.
Sounds good, Dave. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome, and thank you as always. He is James Vandenberg, the former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback, now with RBC Wealth Management, part of that corridorinvestmentgroup.com. Check it out, James. And Bill Happel Jr., the wide receiver. The quarterback, wide receiver, got you taken care of financially. James, again, thanks so much, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next week. As I mentioned, we'll be back with more at Dave OHara Sports, either online or DaveOHaraSports.com. But Hawkeyed with me, Dave OHara. Jeff Horner, former Iowa Hawkeye basketball playing great, will close out the show with us in just a few moments.
There is a spot for women in agriculture. There's many places for females, for female farmers. We can do a lot. Over the years, maybe we couldn't have always done everything, but there's lots of places we're finding on our dairy farm especially that females are really good at milking cows. They're really good caretakers. They're good at taking care of animals and observant and detail-oriented, which fits in well on a farm and can make an operation more successful.
Welcome back to Hawkeyed with me, Dave OHara, and as you can see, I've located Jeff Horner. My buddy joins us each week here. Jeff, a former Iowa Hawkeye, all-time great in the men's basketball annals of history. Jeff still among the statistical leaders in any meaningful offensive category in the Iowa Hawkeyes history books. And first and foremost, as always, Jeff, thanks for joining us. And secondly, I got to give you a fair warning here. Jordan Bohannon is 44 assists behind you. So he's got Andre Wildrich to pass next, and then you at the top of the list. So I'm just curious on your thoughts if you were aware of that, and if J-Bo averages about 3.5 assists for the remaining games this year, he could pass you and become Iowa's all-time assist leader.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I knew, at the beginning of the year that was probably going to happen. So I kind of joked with you about it, and I joked with Jordan about it too. He got 10 extra games from his from the year before. So I'll give him crap about that. But, I'd be happy, for him if he broke that record. And, records are meant to be broken. And, especially with the kind of the year that they're having, I'm sure he'd take wins and all that kind of stuff over any sort of records or anything like that. And, so it's awesome to see, those things happening while he's, been playing on a really good team. Those are just awesome to see.
Yeah, I love to see the closeness of you guys, current players to the past. And even when you and I have talked about players before you, and you talk about Dean Oliver, a Mason City guy like you were, and listeners and viewers, as you know, Jeff is a former Mr. Iowa basketball out of high school and committed to play for the Hawkeyes his freshman year in high school. So we knew that path was going all the way. But Dean Oliver, ahead of you, a Mason City guy, and so you and Dean have stayed close over the years. He was a couple years before you. His career was done a year before you started your career at Iowa in 2002. But it's just always nice to hear that. And as you mentioned, with records made to be broken. But when you take a look at the class act that Jordan did a couple years ago when he was going to break Chris Street's all-time streak of consecutive free throws at Iowa, and he missed that free throw intentionally. And so now Chris Street's name is still in the record book. So it is always nice to hear stories like that. And Jess Settles shared his story when Luka Garza passed Jess for number 9 on the all-time scoring list, and Jess was calling that game when we interviewed Jess a couple of weeks ago when you were out in quarantine, and Jess said the same thing you said. He kind of laughed. He said, Dave, records were made to be broken, and I've been gone so long, it's good time to pass the torch along. But in reference to J-Bo, though, and what the rest of the guys are doing, especially that Maryland game last week, Iowa coming off 2 big victories, getting revenge against Minnesota on Sunday, 2 weeks and 2 days after the Christmas Day night game at Minnesota where the Hawks lost, being ahead by 7 points with 44 seconds to go and lost in overtime. Hawks came back big time on Sunday and at Carver Hawkeye and beat Minnesota. But the game before that, Jeff, is what I want to talk to you about as far as mentality goes. And you take a look at what the Hawks are doing right now. Luka Garza still doing Luka Garza things against Maryland, great game. But then with Wieskamp and Frederick struggled out of the blocks, and then continuing on to that game, What a relief that's got to be for Fran McCaffrey. And Jeff, you know, as a former player and now as a head coach, year 3 as the head coach at Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri, you know what it's like as a coach when you can call on your bench guys and get performances like J-Bo now starting to hit and pass the ball, Jordan Bohannon with leadership. Then you got Patrick McCaffrey coming off the bench as a freshman redshirt, Keegan Murray as a true freshman, Jack Nungy as a redshirt sophomore, but with a lot of experience. That's got to make you rest pretty easy as a coach and a Hawkeye fan, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And, obviously, Iowa's bench is Fran likes to play a lot of guys, and I think his bench is really stepping up this year. Jack Nunny hits a big 15-footer the other night to kind of stop momentum from Minnesota from scoring. And so anytime you can have a guy come in and do that, I think that's huge. Keegan Murray's obviously had a really good year. I texted his dad the other day and just, said how awesome it is to see him out there playing so well. And, had a tough game, a little bit of a tough game against Minnesota on Sunday. But, when you're a freshman, you're going to have your ups and downs, that type of thing. But, he's been playing, really well for the most part. And I think that's huge to see, Joe Toussaint, Aaron Eulis in the Rutgers game, Patrick McCaffrey coming in and giving some valuable minutes too as well. So I think one big thing probably as a coach, kind of what you're seeing is that, when you lose someone like Luka Garza and you lose someone like Bohannon after next year, that, you expect those guys to really step up the next year, and you think the future's bright. I think when your bench kind of starts playing that well, and your bench is as young as what the Iowa team is, so they have a lot of good guys coming back next year too as well. But if they lose anybody, that type of thing, I think the guys coming on off the bench are ready to take a big step, and that's what you hope for.
Yeah, and you talk about that with free throws being made down the stretch by Keegan Murray and on the road no less. And to me, it's just, as you mentioned, it bodes so well for the future. Looking at these guys, they show no fear. They're ready for action. I think a lot of that has to do with the experience you and I have talked about in the past, Jeff, when you talk about AAU experience, and these guys are getting to play against top talent all the time. Do you attribute that, or are guys just more mature coming out of high school, or do you also credit that to the competition they face in the summers playing AAU ball?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that, even if you probably talked to both the Murray twins, if they had not gone to prep school, would they have said that they probably would have come in and been able to do what they're doing right now? Probably not. But, having that just extra year, being able to mature, I think has really helped them out. We were recruiting them when they were in high school. I thought they were being under recruited, and we were looking at both of them. And so it was kind of one of those things where, they went to a year of junior college and it definitely benefited them. There's no doubt about that. So definitely playing in the summer, I think, AAU has its advantages as far as playing against more athletic, better athletes than probably you do in a high school setting, like say in Iowa. But I also think that, when you're in high school, there's a lot of really good coaches who, prepare you for scouting reports, teach you how to play defense, because when it's all said and done, if you're a freshman, you can come in and defend and do the little things to help your team win. You have more of a chance to play right away, in my opinion. And, I'm not saying that AAU doesn't try to do that, but, when you go out on an AAU court, it's more about just going out and playing, as to where when you're, if you're with a good high school coach, the preparation is much larger. So I think you can learn things from both things, and I'm sure those guys have done that. But, be able to play against really good competition can only help for sure.
Yeah, well stated, and thanks for taking us through that process. So I will brag on you a little bit, Jeff, the job you're doing. Your Truman State Bulldogs 8-1, and it's all in conference because there were no non-conference games for you this year in the GLVC, the Great Lakes Valley Conference, Division II, and looks like you're headed towards nationals again as you were last year, and continued success and good luck on that. And you had two victories after you got out of quarantine. When we recorded last Tuesday afternoon with you, you were getting out of quarantine, so you won on Wednesday and Saturday, and so you've got two big victories under your belt. And this team at Truman State that you're coaching now in year 3, as I mentioned, you were 7th in the country, lost a game, and now you've won the last 2, so you went to 13th, and now in and around the top 10 consistently. So that is great news. You got a former player in Broderick Thomas who left the program or graduated last year, and now with the Houston Rockets in the NBA on their roster and getting a little bit of playing time. So things are clipping along quite nicely for you at Truman State in Kirksville, Missouri. And so I'll ask you this, is some of that going to rub off on the Hawks? How do you see this playing out? You know what it's like to play against Tom Izzo and Michigan State, and even though it's on TV, and again, we record this on Tuesday afternoon, and the game is going to be Thursday night on FS1, 8 o'clock Central Time tip, and so you've already seen the game, viewers. But Jeff and I are going to do a little preview of that, and then, of course, against Northwestern at Welsh Ryan Arena. You know what it's like to travel to the north side of Chicago, and Chris Collins got a great group there. They're 6-4. Northwestern's leveled off a little bit, but that's still going to be a tough game. So let's talk about those next 2 games upcoming for the Hawks as we record this on Tuesday and they play on Thursday, Sunday, please.
Yeah, I think, obviously you play Michigan State and usually it's, the roles are a little bit reversed as to where, now Iowa's in the top 5 and Michigan State's not in the top 25 anymore. So usually sometimes it's the other way around and, usually it's Michigan State coming in and we're looking to upset them. So, to have the roles reversed is huge, but I also think it speaks volumes of how good the Big Ten is when Michigan State's not even in the top 25, but with how much talent they have. And, at some point they'll start to get it going, I'm sure. There's no doubt about that. And they've been playing better as of lately too. And, you probably can't have 2 more contrasting teams in a sense of, Iowa's got a ton of shooters. Michigan State has a ton of athletes. And so it's going to be an interesting game. I know it's going to be extremely fast paced because both teams like to get up and down. But it'll be an interesting game on Thursday. And, hopefully Iowa can come out on top. And then obviously Iowa played against Northwestern, already this year and came out with a win at Carver Hawkeye Arena. But anytime you can go on the road and try to get a win in the Big Ten, that's huge. I don't care who you're playing in the Big Ten. It's always a tough game when you go on the road. And so, whether Northwestern's playing good or not, that's something else. But they got a big guy with the Nance kid, who I think is a really good player, probably an NBA prospect at some point. Anytime you have one of those guys on your roster, there's always a chance they can get hot and get going and anything can happen. But, hopefully Iowa goes in and they got enough older guys to be mature about things and that type of stuff. And so we'll see what happens. They could be moved into a tie for first, here after the Wisconsin-Michigan game. So we'll see what happens with that. But, or they could be all alone in second place as well. But, I think Iowa's got it. Like I said, they have an old enough team and mature enough team to where, they're going to go into every game looking to win. And obviously they want to win a Big Ten championship and they know it's at stake.
Amen to that. And Boo Buie, of course, besides Nance at Northwestern, they got to keep him in check as well. And again, as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, the game Jeff is referencing, and you'll know this, viewers, when you see this show on Friday or online at DaveOharaSports.com or at Dave O'Hara Sports via social media. But Michigan and Wisconsin play tonight, Tuesday night. So that will decide if, as you mentioned, if Iowa's going to be in second place as they are now all alone, or if they'll be tied for first and how that all shakes out. So always interesting to catch up with you, Jeff. You've always got tidbits for us to share, and continued success with you and your Truman State Bulldogs. And we look forward to catching up with you next week, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dave.
You're very welcome. He is Jeff Horner, former Iowa Hawkeye, playing great, all-time great, one of the greats in any meaningful offensive statistical category in the histories of Iowa Hawkeye men's basketball, now into year 3 as the head coach at Truman State University. For Jeff Horner and James Vandenberg, David Eicholt, and Joe Mershman, and thanks to you, the viewers, for tuning in each week. And please, again, continue to support our advertisers and supporters of this program, and stay for the end of the program to the rolling credits and support those advertisers and sponsors as they support this show. So without them, we don't have a show. So thank you to them as well. And again, to the aforementioned guests and to you, the viewers. And thanks again for making us #1 in late night. Always appreciate your support on that, viewers. So for, again, the aforementioned guests, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.